Imagine the Earth as a ledger, one that never forgets. Every ton of carbon dioxide ever released is carefully recorded, not erased, not forgiven, only accumulated. Hello, I'm Padmaja, and together with my group members Naveen, Rishi, and Raha, we invite you into our data story, the Carbon Footprint Race. When we talk about climate change, we often ask a simple question: who is emitting the most today? And the answer seems straightforward. Headlines point to one country, one number, and one moment in time. But stories, real stories, are never that simple. Because carbon doesn't disappear when it's emitted, it lingers. It builds, it shapes the world we live in long after the moment has passed. So if we only look at today, we miss the weight of yesterday and the responsibility carried over decades. This is where our story begins. In the carbon footprint race, we move beyond a single snapshot. We explore emissions across time. Who contributed in the past, who leads in the present, and how responsibility shifts when we look at emissions per person and not just emissions per country. Because understanding climate change isn't just about numbers, it's about perspective. And sometimes changing the way we see data changes the story entirely. My colleague Naveen will continue from here.
This visual shows annual carbon dioxide emissions for 2019 and appears to tell a very clear story. China's emissions are significantly higher than those of other countries, which creates a simple narrative of blame. At first glance, this suggests that one country is primarily responsible for the climate crisis. While the data and the chart are technically accurate, the way the visual is designed makes the message misleading. By focusing on a single year and a single metric, by the exaggerating differences through visual design choices, important context is lost. This type of framing can strongly influence public opinion and policy discussions, even though it does not reflect the full contribution of different countries over time.
So, as part of my section, I'll be talking the CO2 emissions in two different perspectives, in two different timelines. So, here in the first chart, if you can see, when emissions are viewed over a longer period time, a different pattern emerges. China rapidly increases in emission is relatively recent and closely linked to industrial development and global manufacturing demand. In contrast, countries such as United States and several European nations have emitted large volume in carbon dioxide consistently over many decades. In the second chart, it's a cumulative data from 1960 to 2019. So in this, cumulative emissions provide insights into who has contributed most to the problem over time. From this perspective, the United States, which is the North America, and Europe accounts for the largest share of total emissions compared to China. So this challenges the dominant narrative created by annual emission figures alone and highlights the importance of historical content. Thank you.
At the start of the video, we saw a chart that looked very clear. It pointed to one country and made the climate problem seem simple. But as we explored the data further, we realized that this picture was incomplete. When we look more carefully, the story changes. Annual emissions show who emits the most today. Cumulative emissions shows who caused most of the problems over time, and as per capita emission show what is fair at individual level. So when we look all three together, one thing becomes clear: the climate crisis was not caused equally, and it cannot be solved equally. So this leads to our first recommendation. Historic emitters must move fastest. So countries like the US and Europe produce large emissions per decades and benefited the most from fossil fuel growth. The data shows that the countries such as UK and Germany have already reduced emission while still growing their economics. This shows that earlier net zero targets are possible. Our second recommendation focuses on development economics. So countries like China and India are still growing and industrializing. Their emission follow the same path that Western countries followed in the past. So expecting them to reduce emission without support is totally unfair. So they need clean technology, funding, and shared knowledge to grow sustainably. But government are not the only one who is responsible. So a large share of emission comes from global supply chain. So this means corporation must also take responsibility. Real actions means helping suppliers reduce emission, not just relying on carbon offsets. So when we look at the data and the full story, the message from the data is very clear. So historic emitters must act faster, developing countries must be supported, not blamed, and corporation must change how they operate. The data has spoken, The next move is ours. Thank you for listening.